Hey there, thanks for taking the time to watch this video on how we are editing a multi-camera, multi-location worship set. Don't know exactly what to call this, but that's what we're going to call it right now. Multi-location camera edit worship set, whatever. So basically what we did, and it's what a lot of churches are doing right now during the coronavirus pandemic, is people are staying at home, and so they're having their musicians record themselves at home singing whatever song it is, and then sending it to one person to compile and edit together into one clip as if they are all singing together at the same time. And it turns out really cool, looks really awesome. We can do a lot of different cuts and angles and creative shots like this one right here. We get all the singers singing the same intense part, or putting them in the corners like this particular shot at some point is going to load. There it is. Yep. And so you know, it's a little bit convoluted. It's a little bit complex because there's a lot of cameras and a lot of angles and a lot of motion and a lot of elements to it. It's not necessarily hard to do any of it. It's just tedious. And so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Basically, you should have all your worship, which should be labeled a little bit better than this, but you get the idea. This is Michelle and Katie and Colby all singing What a Beautiful Name, or playing What a Beautiful Name on bass. Backup, is Adam playing acoustic and singing, Brandon singing backup, Aiden's on drums. So we've got all these, and this is the actual track, the mix that was put together by Adam. We're going to drag that into our timeline, and so we're going to turn this into something that looks like this. This looks super messy, but it's not actually as crazy as you think, and we'll get to that in a second. So here's the final mix right here. It's just the song, just the recording, and we're just going to go ahead and start stacking these on top of it, because we're going to have to sync it. All right. We want all these clips to be synced together, and it's really hard to do without any of the audio. And so what I've had Landon and Colby tell our worship team to do, and what to include in their track, is basically an extra count, an extra, few counts of beats before the song starts, where they all clap once at the same time. For the video. That way, when you look at these little waveforms here, you see these little peaks, these single peaks here. That's where they clapped in sync with the music all at the same time, so that me in post, or you, or whoever ends up editing this, can sync them a little bit easier without having to try and line up, the voices singing the right lyric at the same time, or anything like that. This person decided they wanted to clap a few extra times, and so we'll see if that worked out. Where else? Who's this? This is Brendan. He didn't actually clap at the right place at the beginning, so we'll go ahead and move that one for now, just to make this a little bit easier. Everybody should be clapping at the same time in the future. Another one, if you have trouble in Premiere, what you can do is drag this down a little bit in size so you can see it scaled up a little. All right, is there anyone here? Looks like there's one over here. A little off. Let's bring it forward. There you go. Okay, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. It's not going to be, just because of how cameras filming and frame rates and this timeline works. You can't get it perfect, but you can get really, really, really close. And so that should be everybody in sync. And the way you check is to go through each camera. Let's fast forward in the song a little bit. Let me turn that up real quick so you can hear it a little better. That looks like it's in sync. What's next? Oh, sorry. There you go. All right, so that's Adam. Looks like it. What happens if we solo it? That's right. Cool. So now we got the bass. This is where you got to use your ears a little bit and make sure that, and your eyes, making sure that they're mouthing the right words. And, it looks like they're playing in sync with the music. What a wonderful name it is, and nothing compares. It's good so far. And it's enough so, he's not doing anything too crazy that people would really notice if it was slightly off. What a wonderful name it is. That's in sync. Okay, so she's actually off, and that's either because she clapped on the wrong measure, or any number of things could have happened. And so what we need to do is use our eyes And you can use your ears too and solo it and try to sync it up. But you can also, again, use your eyes. There's a big gap here and a big gap here, which kind of line up with the gap here and here. So we'll go ahead and try and line it up with these two things. I think I added markers because I was trying to do it through the audio, but roughly about there maybe. Sounds like she's a little bit behind the beat, so we're going to move it up a little more. Alright, so again, you want to use your ears. It really helps to be a musician or having some sort of music background so you can hear the different instruments and melodies and harmonies and all those kind of things. But hopefully, you know, with all the elements at play, you can see if they're mouthing the right words, you can hear them, you can look at the waveforms, you can do all these sort of things to help make sure that these are all in sync together, playing at the same time. And so now that we've gotten that done, it's all synced. Wonderful. We're going to go ahead and, you know, just flatten this back end so it's all just straight and clean. Makes it easier. And the next step we're going to do, and this is where it starts getting a little crazy, where it looks a little funny over here with all these cuts. The best way for me personally, you might have a different method to get through this edit really quickly and be able to switch between cameras really easily and not have to juggle with a bunch of you know, cutting in the middle of editing. I actually play through the song all the way through and set markers to the tempo, to the beat. So basically on every measure I place a marker because that's going to tell me where I want to cut. So let's give you an example. We're going to, before we get to that, let's just go ahead and delete these layers because we don't need them anymore. That's the bad rough audio. We just want this really good audio at the beginning. Alright, so we'll start right here. So you want to start counting. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you hear me counting. That's each measure, every measure of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, I put a marker on every 1. 2, 3, 4. Marker. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll notice every time I hit M in Premiere, M makes a marker on the timeline. And that just tells me where my cuts are going to be. I like to be in sync with the music. It just makes it a little bit easier to flow and to cut between. You can do it differently if you want, but I really like having it in sync with the music. 3, 4, 1. And so what you can also do is do it on every 1 and 3 if the song is getting a little bit more intense or you want to make quicker camera cuts. So like 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And basically I do that the entire way through. It's a little bit tedious. There's not really a fast way to do it. You can speed it up, but I notice when I'm setting markers to it, I'm a little bit slow to react. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You could do it that way, but what I've noticed when I went back through to edit is that the marker was always just ever so slightly off. And so I just went ahead and did it at the normal speed and just set a marker to every measure. And so once I've done that, that tells me where I'm going to make my cuts. And so what I'm going to do next, hit C or select your razor tool and go ahead and lock this layer if you can, whatever software you're using. Go ahead and lock it so whatever you do next doesn't mess with it, doesn't edit it. I don't want to cut anything on here. I want to cut the videos. And so rather than just cutting one by one to each of these beats, I hold the Shift key down for Premiere and I can cut every clip on the timeline. And I do that at each marker. You know, wherever the marker is, I make a cut. 3, 4. Make a cut there and say, you know, there's more here. And so I do that all the way through. You can see it over here. I've done it all the way through, and that's where it starts looking messy, is that I've got all these cuts here. But again, it's not that complicated. And basically what it allows me to do is make camera switching super, super easy. If I don't, let's say I wanted to have Adam there. This will be Aiden. I just delete these. And now we've got Colby. Can delete all those, and I'll get Michelle and Katie, and it just makes cutting so much easier, way quicker, rather than doing it kind of tediously and having to cut while editing at the same, just in the middle of the process. This just really saves you a little bit of time in the long run. It might feel tedious at first, but it actually saves you more time in the long run. At least it has for me. And so this is where you get creative. You start making cuts all the way through. You can chop it all up until it looks something like this. And so what you'll notice is I'll drag some a little bit longer than like a measure or 2 measures, because for example, this song, Katie opens it up. It's just her singing with piano. And so I don't want to cut to anybody else because they're not doing anything. There's not really a lot of acoustic. There's not a lot of background vocals. There's no guitar. It's just keys and singing. So drag it out the whole way, and same here. Just it's longer than the 2 measures, or it's longer than 1 measure. It's 2 measures together, and it's a very slow section, so I don't want a lot of movement. But then once they start coming into the chorus, it's every measure there's a cut, cut all the way through. And we'll get to these creative shots in just a moment. Before we do, the split shots or the 4 people in the corner shots, what you'll notice is on each of these clips there's a little bit of motion. She's moving from right to left, he's moving left to right. I think Adam moves right to left. Katie zooms in. Alright, each person has their own little motion, whatever it is, whatever fits the frame. Like he just zooms in for Aiden. I think he's zoomed in as well. And so how I do that is I'll take, for example, Katie's. She just zooms in. We use the keyframes on each of the layers. And so for hers, all we do is zoom in. So we've got the scale set to 125 at default. Without it, it was just a little bit too zoomed out, and I wanted to frame it so it was a little zoomed in around them nicely. So it's at 125. Set a keyframe. You hit this, you hit that, and so there's a little keyframe here. That guy. It's right at the beginning. And I go just past about 2 measures, and I'll increase it to about 10%. So it scales in 125 to 135 by the end of it. Alright, so it's just a slow zoom, very subtle. Just makes it a little more interesting. And so what I'll do is I'll click motion here. I'll copy. You can Control or Command C, and then I select each of those layers, or each of those cuts on her particular layer, her timeline, just hers, and then I will paste it. Either, I guess you can't do it, yeah. Usually you can paste it. I'm not sure why it's not letting me here, but I'll press Control V or Command V, and that's paste, and it'll add that same motion from the beginning all the way to the end for each of these clips. And so you'll notice for every time it goes to her, it's always a zoom. It's always a zoom. And same with Adam. For his, I did a position, so he went from right to left. Went from right, moving to the left. And so for the first frame, let's get this. Oh, not gonna let me because it's weird and glitchy. Here we go. All right, so the first keyframe is set here. Use the position key to move it. It's set right there, and then I go about. I'll go a little bit ahead and move it to where I want it to eventually end up, and then I'll copy this keyframe and move, about 2 measures ahead, and paste it in there. There you go. All right. So it just adds a bit of motion for each of them. And again, I'll just copy this motion, select all the layers in that particular timeline, or select all the clips, and then paste it to each one of those clips. And then it will add that same motion for every time it shows Adam. And it's the same for each of the other singers and instrumentalists. Moves left to right, she moves right to left. He zooms in, zooms in. You can do a zoom out, you can move it wherever. Just be a little bit creative, but also tasteful. Don't do it too dramatic or too intense. And that's how you do those. And so I do that first before I do these multicam shots. I add those motion shot, or the little bit of motion to each of these clips. And so now for this one, these get a little bit complicated because there's a little bit of math involved. Not a lot, but a little. What I'll start off doing in Premiere, you do what's called nesting, and that basically bakes in this clip to itself. So now it already has the motion in here. There's no, like, the settings for the motion are gone. That's because they're already baked into this clip here. So you hit nest, and it just kind of gives you a fresh slate to work with. So in this case, it'd be Adam singing his heart out. And what we do is scale it down to 50% for the 4 corner shots. And then I will just move him up to the corner. You want to make sure you don't have any like black lines on the edges. But from doing it, I know it's 270 by 1440. And now he's in the corner there. And you do the same for each of these. You scale them down 50%, and then you move them into the corner. Scale down 50%, and then you move it into the corner. So you got the 4 corner shot there. You've got the, where's the half shot? Where's the half shot? Let's see. Didn't do very many of these. There we go. Here's the half shot. Basically, again, I nested the sequence first, or I nested the clip first. That way it's all baked in. And that way, if you look, the motion is still kind of in that shot because it's already baked into the clip. And so for this one, I added a crop, which you can look into your effects and find crop. Add that in there. And we want about a 50% crop, so 20 plus 30. Trying to center it. It's weird how these effects are set up, but this one's 20% left, 30% right, and now that's about 50% of that frame. And I moved him to the right side, roughly there. And I need to crop hers because her layer is behind his, so I just framed it. And there you go, you got a split shot. Alright, and you got the 4-1 here, and now we got this 5, okay, we'll move forward. This is autosave. You might have noticed it a few times. Please turn autosave on if you have not already. You can find it in your preferences, autosave. So I have mine, I think, about every 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe it's every 5. It's probably every 5, because I've had so many times where my project will crash. Adobe just gives up on me, and it's like 2 a.m. at night, and I will have just lost 2 hours of work because I forgot to save, because I was in such a rush trying to get something done. And having autosave, although it is kind of annoying to pop up every now and then, it has saved me so much more time than it's frustrated me. So I'm very thankful. Please turn autosave on, or you will lose projects. You will lose so much editing work if you forget to save. So please do that. Now back to the main thing. We've got this shot. This is the complicated one because it's 5 clips trying to fit into this one frame. So we're trying to fit 5 in here. So it's about 20%. You know, if this was 100 width, each of these takes up 20%. 20% divided by, or 100 divided by 5 is 20%. And so with the cropping, you want to make sure you have 20% of the frame available to you. So 60 plus 20 is 80. That means there's 20% left. 45 plus 35 is 80. And that means we have 20% left. 40 plus 40 is 80. There's 20% left in the frame. If I cropped it further, it would crop off what I don't want. So I try to have the crop centered around their face. So, you know, you could have it like 20 and 60, but that chops them off here. It's still 20%, but it chopped off his face. So you just kind of have to align it so it's, you know, centered with their face, and then position it appropriately. You know, it's not always going to be perfect. There might be a line. Just get it as close as you can. That way each of them have their own little spot in the frame. Again, it's just 20%. That way you fit all 5 of the singers in there at one time. And that's how you do that particular shot. It's a little bit complicated, but hopefully you understand the math there. But what you'll notice is, like, for here, we've got the beat on every measure, but then I started doing it double time. And so there's 2 cuts per measure up into this big climactic shot with all 5 of them. So let's take a listen.
That is who you are. That is who you are.
2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Cut. 4, 1. Climactic shot.
That is who you are. You are.
So that's pretty much the majority of the editing you're going to have to do. You kind of go nuts and go crazy. You can kind of be quick and rough with some of it and just, sync it up with when people are singing, when the bass comes in, when the drums come in, cut to those instruments. When someone's leading out really strongly a part, or if the harmony starts coming in, like cut to those people, just to add the visual interest, just to make it make sense. But then you can also be kind of creative and do a bunch of different cuts and do this big unified shot. Those kind of shots are really just when it's like the climax, or there's like a big part where everybody's all in. You just want to kind of add those elements in there to get it to be a bit creative. But otherwise, that's the most of it. What's left now is these lyrics, and that takes a bit of time too. Again, this is one of the harder projects to work on. It's very tedious. It's not hard, just tedious is what I should say. But we've got the lower third here introducing the song, right as the song starts, when the first melody starts coming in, add the little lower third there saying what it is. This is a motion graphic. I think I bought this one somewhere, or I got it from a subscription pack or something. You can find a bunch. Sometimes Adobe has some built in, but it's a little animation. It's kind of cool. You can edit it so it says whatever else you want. Change the song. And then these are just text, just titles. You hit T on your keyboard, it'll pop up with the text thing, and then you just type whatever. I go online and look up the lyrics for the song, and I copy paste line per line onto the timeline. And so here's the first one.
You are here, moving in our midst.
And I try to cut to the next line slightly before they start singing it. But what I'll do is I'll copy the previous one, paste it here, and then I'll just paste in the new lyrics, the updated lyrics, whatever those might be. In this case, it's I worship you, I worship you. And so what's cool is, like, once you pretty much go through that, once you get to a chorus and you go through it once, you can copy and paste that chorus into the other times the chorus comes up again. So Waymaker, Miracle Worker, Promise Keeper, My God, That Is Who You Are. And they sing it multiple times. I just copy and paste it. And, you want to make sure it is in line with how they're singing and it comes in at the right times. It's a little bit tedious, again. But you want to get it in sync and add all the lyrics. As far as font goes, this particular font is called Zwiz. It's free to download. It's basically an Arial or Helvetica knockoff that I liked. But you can use Helvetica, you can use Gotham or Montserrat or Futura. Bold is a good one. Any of those really clean, simple fonts. Make sure it's all caps and it's roughly about this size. And you only ever want 2 lines per slide. You don't want to have, something like this going on. Like, then that just takes up too much of the frame. So we don't want that. And you also don't want, let's see, we don't want it going out to the edges. So if it goes too far, just make a new line and cut it to a new slide if you have to. If it's too long and it's, getting to the edges, just make a new slide and add it in. Don't go much wider than this, and, only 2 lines, and that should keep it pretty clean. All right. And so you'll render out these songs. You'll blend them together. For example, this one fades out. This is Waymaker. And they left a long period of free worship at the end in pads. That way it gave me a chance to fade it out and fade in the next song. So the next song starts here, and the previous song is still fading out. It's actually 2 different videos, 2 different recordings. And so if that ruins your church experience, I apologize. They are pre-recorded and separately done and not done once through. Just for the sake of how church is happening right now, this is how we got to do it. And so that's it. That's how it's happening. We have to fade this one out. And to kind of cover the cut between songs, I just used, the parts where everybody was just kind of chill and free worshiping. And then finally cut to Katie starting the song here. and it was such a clean cut. There was a good fade in between the two songs that you hardly noticed anything, you know. It just flowed straight into the next one. All right. Hopefully this gives you a really big picture on how to edit all this stuff. I know it's a lot, and I know it might be overwhelming and confusing. It is just really tedious. It's not hard, I promise you. It's, you know, the majority of the time it takes is just being a little bit creative, figuring out, you know, what clip you want to go where or which cut to take. But otherwise, most of this is just click, 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 click all the way through. Really simple stuff. So yeah, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, please let me know. Open book, text me, call me, send me an email, whatever it is. But anyways, oh, one last thing, how to render. If you haven't seen from the other video, basically Controller Command M, or you can go to File, Export. Once you've set your in and out points, you know, you want it to be at the very beginning. You can I and O, set the in and out. Control M or File, Export Media. File, Export Media. And you want to set it to H.264. Name it, you know, whatever you feel is appropriate. I usually have it set to Online 2020 Worship, and then whatever the date is. You know, this would be the 3rd of May 2020, so 5/3/20. 1920 by 1080, 23976. All this is probably left alone. I set it to VBR2 pass with 11.8 for the bottom as a target, and then maximum of 12. And that just makes it so the file size is small enough to send quickly, but also really, really good quality. And so if you have a better preset, great. This is what I've been using, and it's worked out well for the past, you know, 5-6 years. It's done really well. So anyways, once you do that, you hit render, and you should be good to go. Send it to me at crosswalk.cc/upload. It'll come straight to us, and we'll be able to get that into service for the weekend. If you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, God bless you. Have a great day.